We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by go. You know the thing.
And this might be that opportunity where I can finally become cool.
SOCO.
Hey,
I
Matt,
need to tell you about something.
what do you can tell me about?
This is totally serious too. I
Wait,
had a
okay.
dream. I had a dream last night. Okay,
About
I was watching the news, and suddenly, like,
that's the dream part, right? You actually watching
yes,
news.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. I wanted to
exactly,
clarify.
because I
Okay.
don't watch the news ever, unless it's like listening to Coast AM at midnight or whatever. But I was watching the news, and in this news that was running, um, the Supreme Court had decided that Trump had actually won the 2020 election. And it was one of the weirdest dreams I ever had because it was neither scary nor was it like comfortable feeling. It was like, what happened? What is this? I was living in one reality and now I'm living in this totally other reality. One where, you know, our esteemed president elect to be was not the president elect.
Well, where this is interesting. I'm
Did you also have a similar dream?
No, I haven't had any particular dream of that. I I think it's a little odd.
It's super odd. It's one of the weirdest dreams I've ever had because I never have dreams about the news because I
Why do you
don't
think
watch
that?
the news.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
why
So
would I ever have a dream about the news? What do you think it means, SoCo?
you secretly care about all this stuff?
Oh, don't do that to me. Screw you.
I That's what it comes down to. You actually really care about this stuff.
I hate it.
Well, it's the election stuff is so goofy. I mean, today was actually a big deal for it, just because they were having the March for Trump. If you know what, if
Oh,
you heard about
actually, I
that,
didn't catch that. So what's going on there?
just Trump supporters going down to Washington to push for the whole election being illegal to them. Uh, I saw some videos here and there, but it's funny because I follow a lot of. I'm on Twitter, a lot.
Yeah.
And I follow a lot of leftist pundits, and the leftist pundits are just not caring enough for this news. Uh, I
I
mean
mean,
that.
I would guess that they don't really care about any news beyond this point now that it's like, oh, okay, well, Joe Biden's going to be president, whatever, you know. Like well, of course that's always my guess at what leftists are feeling right these days.
Well, and keep in mind when I say leftist, you know what I'm talking about. Like not liberals, but leftists. Liberals, on the other hand, are different.
No, I know. Well, this seems to interchange every episode because there have been times where I've been like, "Yeah, leftists," and you're like, "Oh, but do you also mean liberals?" And I'm like, "No, no, I just mean like the most staunch Antifa Marxist communists out there who are just like ready to topple the entire government at a moment's notice." And then sometimes you're like, "Oh no, I don't just mean them. I also mean liberals, like you know, people
Yeah,
nobody likes." For
this.
some reason.
Okay, I guess you're actually. It's confusing because I, I mean, I guess I'm too lost in my mind. So no,
Sure.
but I guess we'll have to clarify what we're talking about, or what I'm talking about when I say leftists or liberals or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, this it's an odd. Uh, it's hard to clarify everything because when I'm talking, I guess maybe it's more corporate Democrats. Maybe that's it. But
Okay.
even that might not always be the best. And I guess liberal pundits I'm thinking about are mainly coming from a lot of bigger outlets like MSNBC, CNN. And it's funny because they're the ones really talking about this whole the March for Trump, a coup. But the ones who aren't really tend to be more, I would say, ones who push more for. They were the Sanders supporters. That's who
Yeah.
a lot of them are. I follow, like, for example, Nathan Robinson off of Current Affairs, a great news site if anyone cares to uh, look into it. It's actually even located in New Orleans.
Oh,
So yeah, I mean, Current Affairs is in New Orleans.
I
So
had no idea.
yep, it's a good outlet. I like it a lot. Intercept or anything else. Those, they're. I mean, they might mention a little bit here and there, but it's not really a big thing. All the other ones are all talking about, oh, Trump is planning a coup. I'm talking about MSNBC or CNN. They're like planning a coup. The, the we're gonna lose democracy. All this other stuff.
That's
But
always my favorite when like MSNBC and the generally, I, I guess corporate. We'll say corporate Democrats. I feel like that's the most appropriate definition for that type of. I mean, there are also the types who gave us the RussiaGate thing, good old
yes,
RussiaGate. They kind of thrive on having some sort of overarching narrative going on that, like, if we don't act now by doing X or X, um, somebody somewhere is going to take away our right to vote for presidents we don't like.
yeah.
So
Oh god. Oh man. Oh, it just really upsets me. Really upsets me. But anyway, I think we need to just do quick intros if that's okay, Matt.
oh yeah, intros, sure.
Okay. Of course, this is the Welcome Back Biden podcast. My name is SOCO. And what's your name again?
What is my name? After I woke from the dream, I realized my name was Matt Rainwater.
Matt Rainwater.
I
Okay.
don't know if that's really my name, but that's the name that was in my head when I woke up. So
I believe it. And then, of course, we have our lovely producer, Dave, who will be remaining silent, but that's okay. Um, so, well, Matt, we just talked a little bit about the election stuff. Maybe we'll go more deeper into it. I don't know. But I think let's get on to like the main course, uh,
sure.
which is you can go ahead and introduce it.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have there's sort of a lightning round of topics we can go through. First and foremost, as I had predicted last episode, the monoliths have increased in number. We are
Yes.
now at least as like last noted, thank you producer Dave, 34 sightings within 17 European countries, 19 sightings in the United States. Other countries that have sightings include Australia, Panama, Colombia, and Paraguay. So some of the monoliths have been, artists have come out and said, okay, yeah, we made this monolith. Other groups have come out and said, like, oh yeah, this was our responsibility. But there are a bunch that remain anonymous. There was one, I want to say it was in Australia, that had coordinates on it, and the
Oh, whoa.
coordinates
Okay.
went to like random places, like a place in Brooklyn, New York, and then another place that was like in Australia or something. So there's clearly, like, I don't know if this is just one of the. Okay, this happened with the crop circles back in the 90s where
Yeah.
there was crop circle mania, right? So you
Yes.
had you had crop circles that popped up that people were like, "Oh, we don't know where that came from. That must have been a UFO or something." And then there was a bunch of crop circles that were like, people just outright saying, "Oh yeah, that was us." So I don't know if we're going to get into the next phase, which is scientists will get involved to verify whether or not the monoliths are of alien origin or not. That's the next step in this procedure as it goes.
Oh, it's just funny. I mean, I knew something like this. There are just many people just getting into it. They're like, oh, they saw a monolith. Let's go make our own monolith and just get people excited about this.
Quite
That's what's
frankly, we needed it in 2020 with all the other stupid shit going on. We needed something that was just like pointless and silly and not, like having people go, well, I don't know, maybe it is aliens. I don't know. Like we haven't really that hasn't really taken hold yet. Like we haven't gotten into that point of like alien hysteria yet. I'm waiting for it. I mean, it kind of pops up here and there, but we've had the Pentagon announce stuff like, "Oh yeah, we do have possession of alien spacecraft," or "Oh yeah, like here's actual videos that we've cited of unidentified flying objects and stuff." And to add to that topic, we have a news article that came out this week from, well, the original post I put up was from Jerusalem Post, but
Yeah.
pretty much everybody has covered it. So this guy named Haim Eshed, who's worked for Israel's space program for like 30 years as something to do with his security. Like he's been a recipient of the Israel Security Award, which I'm not really sure what that means, but sounds important. But he has come out. He has come out stating that there has been contact between Israel and the U.S. with aliens, and that they've signed a contract. It's been on paper that the aliens have signed a contract with at least Israel and the United States, I'm sure other countries, to establish a base on Mars.
No, wait, no, I thought the article said that the base is already there.
That's
Isn't
right.
the
But they
base?
did sign a contract. Maybe I could be getting it wrong, but I'm pretty sure they signed a contract some time ago to establish a base on Mars,
Uh-huh.
and that these aliens are part of a galactic federation that's interested in investigating space. Like this very like broad, abstract, noble cause of like we're just aliens that just want to look at space, and that's it. And when you're ready to investigate space with us, when you understand what space and space vehicles are, which is an actual quote, um, you can join the Federation.
I well, like I said, I wanted to clarify this though. I think it actually said that Americans and these aliens are already there. It said American, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm pretty sure that that was part of it too. I don't quite remember that detail, but I think you're right, Soko. I actually like last night I listened to one of my favorite paranormal shows, paranormal and conspiracy shows,
Yeah.
which is what is it called? It's called Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, and he was commenting
Mhm.
on it, and he was crying shenanigans on it. He was like, this sounds like a guy who's been reading the internet lately and has a book to sell, and so he just said this in an interview, and I'm like, okay, if this guy said that, like if he's skeptical, like this is a guy who has like spotted UFOs several times, talked about alien, all this alien abduction stuff, and like is pretty consistently on board with it. Like if he's skeptical about it, then I'm kind of the mindset that maybe this is just a publicity stunt.
I it,
Who
I don't
knows?
I don't know, Matt. This man said he's at the end of his tether, essentially. He's like, he said, I pretty much have hit the success I wanted in life, and now I'm just willing to let everything go. Um, I mean, he said he's 87, according to the article, and he's just like, yeah, I'm just gonna tell you guys everything. I've already had my career. This stuff was very controversial, essentially. If I had said it before, I would have come off as a crazy person. But now, since I'm done with my career, I'm going to tell you guys everything.
That's right. He
So,
mentioned something that like academia was now more open to it, and I'm like, what in academia exact? Like where? Like I haven't gotten the notion that academia has been open to things lately. But okay, sure. Maybe in Israel it is. I don't know.
I mean, my thing is like, I mean, I'm all excited about this Galactic Federation, uh, because I mean, it's Star Trek, because this means like didn't it say something about we have to get to a certain point in our technology?
All he said was that the aliens were waiting for us to understand what space and space vehicles were. We have a fucking rocket ship. What more do we need? Like,
Well, like we need to hit warp speed, and then according to Star Trek, as I recall, and you can correct me, the Vulcans once the Earthlings were able to get warp speed technology, the Vulcans came, or was it the Vulcans that gave them warp speed technology? I
no,
forget.
the Federation made it on its own. Okay, so here's my other theory: is that
Yeah.
Haim Rashed has been binging Star Trek on Netflix for the last year. That's all that's left in his brain. Like he's about 80 something. He doesn't have anything else going on in his life right now. He's probably thinking about retiring. He's just been binge watching the Star Trek on and on and on. So, a reporter comes to ask him, like, oh, what do you think about whatever? And he's like, he just starts rambling about Federation and aliens. And because what else are you going to do?
Well, I'm all for it. I really am hoping for the Star Trek future. Uh,
Me
and
too.
I mean, there's other there are other things at play because also, as you know too, um, there was a what was it? A political party in Ireland, I want to say,
Okay.
uh, essentially talking about unification for um, I think the person's name is Mary Lou McDonnell, and they were talking about the possibility for Ireland happening within 10 years, meaning Ireland and Northern Ireland, right? To be completely united again. Uh,
Wow.
and I mean, there was also then uh, a novelist talking about, I believe it was actually a Scottish novelist by the name of Val McDermid,
That's right.
who, and I don't know, are you familiar with that author by chance?
No, I never read their work, but
Okay. Well, according to this article, it's something about they're like really big in like uh, crime mystery or something novel. I don't know. And they were talking about the possibility of also a unification for Ireland by around within 5 years. Now, keep in mind, why I'm talking about all this is because Star Trek also talked about the unification of Ireland in 2024. What year is it right now? 2020. What did that author say? Within 5 years. So the possibility of Star Trek future is just coming.
I mean, if
I'm
we want to
telling.
go down that route, Star Trek also predicted there was going to be some great war that like started on the West Coast or something, and like people were fighting in the streets in San Francisco, and San Francisco would become the new capital of the new world order, where everybody's united or whatever the hell. Uh, Here's the
What?
thing.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
my response to that story, actually, one of the first things that I thought about, and
Yeah.
something that's been a trend globally, I mean, it seems like we've seen a pretty big trend of like fractioning and division.
Hmm.
So Brexit being like one of the biggest shots across the bow in that sense, and so it looks like uh, the rest of the British nations are also kind of going, or I say British, the rest of the United Kingdom is kind of going, okay, well, if they want to be part of the European Union, we don't want to be part of Britain either.
Yeah.
So like they're all dividing up, and I am of the opinion that this is kind of a signal of a greater trend of what might be happen more commonly globally over the next couple of years, and
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
actually like really similar to some events that Neil Stevenson writes about in his novel Snow Crash. And this is Snow Crash is a book I would recommend to everybody because
Hmm.
I think it really, in a creepishly way, describes what I think the future might be like, which is kind of super capitalistic, very anarchistic, where people have divided themselves into what are called burbclaves. And they're just like really fancy subdivisions where people can wall themselves off from each other and kind of have all their needs taken care of within the subdivision. And that's already like you can see stuff like that already happening with like the Apple
Yeah.
compound and the Facebook compound and stuff like that. But
Well,
it also he goes further into it by having really odd ideas like a franchised version of Hong Kong that you can like get into wherever you go around the world. And it's a really fascinating book. I recommend it. I'd recommend it to everybody because it's sort of I think it gives an indication to a certain extent of like what it is that people want to some degree, which is like they don't want to belong to anything. They just kind of want to be their own thing. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
That I don't completely understand. Go on further.
Um, well, like people want to be in their micro communities, right? Like you
Okay.
go on the internet and you're going to find some kind of like Twitter or like Facebook community that that is very much for their very specific needs. And I think it is very possible in the future that we're going to see more of that happen over time where it's like, oh, it's a it's like a subdivision and everybody that lives there is a furry. Or like, here's a subdivision and everybody who lives here is like nudist. You know, like there's all kinds of communities like that exist already, but I think that it's going to become more and more of the thing because people really don't want to have to deal with the reality that other people with different morals and different opinions exist in the world, which,
Right.
you know, is part of what happened with the whole last 4 years, right? Like, there's a pretty big conflict with two major differing opinions about how the United States should look like. So does that clear it up?
I think so. I mean, I was gonna say like there is that phenomenon with the kind of populist movement happening around in all parts of the world. In the
Yeah.
Philippines, with I think with Duterte, um, India with Modi, even I think Pakistan's with what's his name, Imran Khan, and I want to say also with Turkey too. So it's not like I mean, but what you're talking about in this case like more of a subcultures, right? Is that what you're
Yeah,
talking about?
what I'm talking about is right now we're seeing it as these very big divisions that are based on major philosophical differences. But over time, what
Hmm.
I would guess to see is that it's going to become more and more trivial as we move on, where it's just like, well, I just don't like MSNBC and you like CNN, so we can't live together or whatever, stupid shit like that. But like stupid shit like that is kind of the trajectory of things for at least for the moment being. I hope it doesn't stay that way.
Well, we talked about with the Ireland stuff because the author I I am not going to be able to say their name correctly, but I think it's Val
McDermott?
McDermott. I think that's McDermott, right? I
Yeah,
believe. Uh,
McDermott.
they were talking in this case about how because they're actually for the author is actually Scottish and they're for an independent Scotland. Uh, but I think the main point, which you kind of mentioned earlier with Brexit, was that Brexit is kind of going to cause this domino effect to whereas because for right now there's as the author kind of pointed out that there seems to be a much more majority opinion for an independent Scotland. Now I think you might recall back in I think it was 2014 where they actually had a referendum to see if to break off.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's
do you
right.
remember that?
Yeah, I forgot
Uh,
about
I mean, it it didn't happen, obviously. I mean, uh, but there seems to be now a stronger opinion for it in comparison to before. And the author, I mean, if Brexit, goes through completely, whatever. Um, I don't actually keep up with all of this, but um, then the author felt that this might push for stronger for Scotland. And if Scotland goes, then they feel like
that. Oh yeah,
Ireland's going to go follow. If or maybe it might be the case Ireland goes first,
right.
and then Scotland.
And this
So
is what to me it looks like if this goes through, I feel like it's going to be very much a domino effect because you're going to see that happen, and then you're going to see other countries. I mean, I say this as a joke, but I've been talking for forever about it. So sooner or later, some state in the United States is going to succeed. I mean, like the West Coast is threatening to secede.
I don't know how. I mean, I don't know how they're going to do that. I say that because like they don't have like an independent military or anything like that.
No, they don't. But you never know what. I mean, this is an age of you never know what the hell's going to happen.
Well, that's true. Things are certainly just really, really odd. I what I oh I just forgot what I was about to say here. Um, well, actually, no. Actually, when you were talking about this kind of independence, isn't that something for even a lot of libertarians talk about? And but in this case, talking about independent city states,
Yeah,
right?
they're totally. A lot of libertarians are more into the like independent city-state type things, or even just like estates or compounds or things like that, where it's just somebody privately forms their own whatever, I call it a city, community, whatnot, and it's all handled within that specific area. There's no outside interference from the federal government, the state government, whatever.
Well, I wonder. I do know that with the culture stuff, it is certainly getting more uh isolated in people's
Yeah,
like perspectives on what's happening in the greater culture of the United
yeah.
States. I think I've told you about this before. You have seen a documentary, or maybe I haven't, but that documentary, I think it's called uh, "The Best of Enemies."
No, I haven't. What's
It's about what's his name, Gore Vidal and William Buckley.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
I've heard about this. Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
And it's actually about they had these. I mean, I didn't know anything beforehand about these events. I learned about it from the documentary. They had these debates in the 1960s that CBS broadcasted, and it helped CBS with their ratings
Sure.
and such. But
You
anyway,
know, do you have any idea what point, like what the historical period was? Like what decade that was?
1960s, and
Okay.
I cannot remember if it was during Kennedy or if it was Nixon. I don't remember.
Yeah, I'd
Okay.
love to know if that was like before the counterculture or after the counterculture. Just to have some idea of historical precedence if we're going to see something similar or different from that. But
Well, I
anyway,
mean,
cool.
well, the point is like something if for me, and I watched this like when it first came out on Netflix. I forget when, but a point it made was actually towards the end. Essentially, like because I mean these debates were shown on national television, um, but it was a time when also, and think about this now, there weren't that many stations, right?
Mm, right.
uh, Americans in general had very few to pick from compared to now. And these essentially it talked about how, at one point there was this kind of common discussion. Because honestly, maybe I forget how many stations there's: ABC, CBS, NBC at that time. I guess I actually don't know the history behind PBS either, but or when PBS actually started. If you know, please tell me, Matt, because I don't know.
No, you're talking to the wrong person. I don't know. I have no clue.
But there was a limited amount of stations, right?
Yeah.
And these were I think stations people can access. Uh and these were the ones that everyone was watching. But now we've had such more variety and people can pay for services and basically just isolate themselves, to whereas there's not really a common
Yeah,
discussion anymore because they're not all looking at the same content anymore, together in a way.
for sure.
And that it was I mean that was really a point made. And actually I actually really enjoyed the documentary. Kelsey Grammer narrates it too, so so Frasier, in case everyone wanted to know. And no,
Salad and scrambled eggs.
yeah.
It's interesting that you're bringing that up because that definitely gets further into the point I was making earlier, which is that all of the expectations are not expectations, but all the stuff we're seeing happen now politically and internationally and whatnot, they proceed from the media that we interact with, and the media we have nowadays. Even though the internet was originally designed to bring everybody together, it's at this time just driving everybody further apart. And I don't know if that will be the trend forever. I doubt it, but
Mhm.
at the same time, I can only, like you can only recognize the trend that's happening right now and project forward, assuming that that's going to carry on for however long. And if it carries on for another 10 years, like, will there even be a federal government? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so much happened in the last 4 years. Like, as much as I'm trying to promise 4 years of nothing happening, with the Biden presidency, that doesn't necessarily mean that nothing will happen. Something, what I mean? Like, it could be a mess.
I I don't even really know. It's hard to predict anything. I mean, I think there is a lot of uh silliness happening.
Yeah.
Uh and I maybe we can get into a topic later on this because I am a little upset with the what I'm calling the censoring that's happening with like Facebook or Twitter. And what I'm talking about is those groups that were created to essentially uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Investigate the sources for information. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember any of the names of those sources though.
Yeah, it's anyway. It's upsetting for me, but and we can talk about that another time. Uh, I just wonder what. I mean, I think the thing is like Facebook, Twitter, certainly like when it comes to even broadcasting, there are regulations in place, and those are by FCC, right? If I'm not
Right.
mistaken.
Yeah.
And there are certain things that you can broadcast, and there's certain things you can't really broadcast. They're limited by, and I think they're trying to regulate that now into the social media space. I don't think that.
Kind of. The only way they're trying to regulate right now is by trying to break up social media, like, owners, basically. Like right now there's some sort of effort being made
Mhm.
to break up like Facebook and Instagram, but really all that means is that new people will own Instagram, which is just like saying, well, we're going to give money to somebody else. Like, it's not really. I mean, I guess that's their concept of breaking up Facebook, but it's still just like it's going to be the same corporate thing that it was previously.
Well, yeah, I mean, Facebook won't have any control over Instagram, which is more popular than Facebook, I believe. Um, but anyway, uh, now, even though I won't go way too into this, and we can talk about it another time with that
No,
with
it's a huge
Facebook and
topic.
such.
I don't. Yeah,
So
that
yeah,
wasn't that wasn't what I signed up for today. So,
that's fine. So another time we can talk on that. I do think it's going to be really. I mean, we really don't know what's going to happen in the future, but you did mention earlier about. I mean, I'm all excited about this idea. Getting back to it about a possible Star Trek future happening, and you even kind of mentioned it even in a previous episode with Elon Musk's and I think SpaceX and some of the stuff they're doing
yeah,
to really push forward more with space stuff. But you also just mentioned about that one episode about the riots, I think, happening in San Francisco.
yeah, exactly.
And that was actually in our note. We do take notes, people. We do have notes, so But the notes I put on, I think that the episode you're talking about is actually from Deep Space Nine. It's called Past Tense. And that's when Captain Sisko, Dr. Bashir, and Jezdia
That's right.
they go back into the past by accident somehow. I forget.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
probably a transporter accident. Who knows? I mean, it's usually.
it's usually that. It's usually that. And they, I mean, they go back to an event that's a very important catalyst uh, for the future. That leads to just the Federation and such. Talking about, and I remember when I watched this episode. Keep in mind, I've been watching Star Trek like for the last since this pandemic. I've been watching a lot of Star Trek, and I mean a lot of Star Trek. And it was funny when I came to this episode because I was like, oh, it's kind of like the times now a little bit,
Yeah.
because they are essentially at this point is, and I'm going to say, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. I can't remember all the details of this episode, but essentially they go into this point in the event of American history, United States history, and um, essentially there is a large number of the population that can't support themselves.
Right.
Okay.
A lot of people are homeless. Like it's food rationing, giant bread lines. It's guns in the street, people, paramilitary groups, the whole 9 yards,
Yeah.
as I remember it.
And as I recall too, like I guess United States government or whoever essentially decides, or it might have been city governments, I forget, but essentially they start building up these enclaves to essentially uh, cage these people in these kind of
Oh,
communities.
that's right. I forgot about that.
The idea was to kind of help address the poverty or vague these issues of people not being able to support themselves, and it turns into a greater issue of them essentially just creating uh, ghettos. And
They
actually,
actually kind of borrowed a plot line from a Philip K. Dick novel called
oh, is that where it comes from?
I don't know if that is actually where it comes from, but I'm gonna guess maybe. I'm sure like these writers who are doing Star Trek have read plenty of Philip K. Dick as well as like plenty of other people, and that's where they get their plot ideas. I want to say
Yeah,
it's probably Flow My Tears the Policeman said, which is one of the weirdest books I've ever read. But anyway,
yeah.
that's a totally other tangent. Um,
Oh, but that episode, and there are, I mean, it's an important what happens, as they suggest in the event, is that some riots happened, essentially
yeah.
bringing attention to these kind of, I guess, really class issues happening around the country. And what it moves forward is basically, I guess, pushing policies that kind of unite or resolve these issues, not through the way of like isolating people, but actually addressing the issues of poverty and some of, or famine, or not famine, but um, just the ills of society, and pushing past what we call like, I mean, Star Trek is supposed to be about a post scarcity world, right?
Right. But I
uh
mean, that works really easy when you can just make food out of whatever the hell you want when you have a matter compiler or whatever they call it.
Replicator, as I recall.
Replicator, yeah. And
I
that
mean,
makes it pretty easy.
actually, I get really, because the Replicator is so, Star Trek is funny of a show because, I mean, those guys, you're talking about like how some of those writers, they, I guess with Philip K. Dick, where they get some of their ideas, but some of their ideas are so dumb. Like the dumbest thing I
Like,
think,
which ones are you thinking?
uh, and I found this out. I was like, because the dumbest thing when it comes to, especially, this goes for Star Trek, original Star Trek, the original series,
Yeah,
Next Generation, and Deep Space Nine. The goofy fighting, the actual
sure,
punching,
sure.
the where they do the double fist, if you know what I'm talking about, where they clamp their hands and they slam. Like, I don't know. And I'm like, that's not a realistic fighting move. I can tell you that. I know that. I mean, not that I have any experience really fighting, but uh
I mean, I remember Captain Kirk doing that a lot. Who else did that? Did they
I
do that in Next Generation?
yes, they did it Next Generation, and they did it in Deep Space Nine as well.
Well,
And
you're not watching. Nobody's watching Star Trek for the action scene.
no,
It's
but
not what
it
it's
hurt.
there for.
But it hurts to think that.
It
I mean,
hurts.
because they're like the idea, and I guess Gene Roddenberry is like, we're trying to imagine what the future could be like, right?
Yeah.
Um, and this is not really possible. But I kind of looked it up too, to whereas, okay, about this goofy move, is it even a good fighting move? And it's not. But
Oh,
do you know how they came up with it? You know why they came up with it?
I would love to know. Please tell me.
It was because the choreographer, I guess the guy who does all the actual stunt moves or whatever, action
Yeah.
movements, he thought it wasn't based off of anything. Besides, I think they might have seen this in wrestling matches, like
Oh,
at that
it's
time.
definitely a wrestling move, for
Yeah,
sure.
and by wrestling, I'm talking about the fake type,
Yeah,
WCW and such,
yeah.
or WWE or whatever it's called now, and because we grew up on WWF, as I recall. But anyway,
I was a
um,
WCW person myself, so.
WCW. So the guy thought it just like he came up with the move, and partially from that, but he thought it looked futuristic. That was the reason. He thought it looked
It was just like, this
futuristic.
is how everybody will fight in the future in this really dumb way.
I was like, what is
Nice.
this? It's
I
not
like
based off anything besides what he thinks it looks futuristic. But in reality, it's not an effective move at all.
This is the coolest thing ever, because what this implies is that there is a character in Star Trek that has not been covered yet in any like dumb extended universe story that is like the mixed martial arts master that brings about this double fist thing that everybody hits each other over the head with. And it could be this wonderful movie of like, oh, this technique will never work, and then he knocks some guy out, and it's like, oh my god.
Well, that's like, well, I mean, the move is also in Dragon Ball Z, and that's a very realistic show. So, as you know,
There's so many implications to what you're talking about, because then that also means you can have a Dragon Ball. Maybe, here we go, idea for a Star Trek miniseries. Hit me up, CBS All Access. All right, Star Trek X Dragon Ball Z transporter accident takes Goku from his world into Star Trek world, and he teaches them how to hit each other over the head with the double fist thing, and they learn how to do a Kamehameha.
I mean, I've always wanted to do Kamehameha. I always, when I watch Dragon Ball Z, I always believe I can do it.
I did
After
too.
watching-
Literally every middle schooler had the same delusion. After, I don't know why Dragon Ball Z, for whatever reason, has this effect on middle school boys. For some reason, I watched Dragon Ball Z, and then afterwards was inspired to go into the backyard and like train by like throwing a giant rubber ball around. Like, if I do this enough, I'll be able to shoot energy out of my hands.
I was with you there, Matt. I was with you too. Oh God. Oh well. What can you do?
No Star Trek future, no Kamehamehas. Real life is not as fun as that, unfortunately. At
No,
least not yet.
definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, the replicator too is always kind of a little too ridiculous.
Well,
I mean,
because you say that, but the replicator is the thing that could actually be possible at some point, and people have actually tried to do stuff in that realm and are actually making efforts. Like there have been people making blueprints and making what you call it, like
I didn't.
patents for like warp drives and stuff. And there's definitely people attempting to make replicators
I didn't know
for sure.
about that. I didn't. I should probably look that up. I mean, I only say it's just the. Well, I don't mind the idea of it producing food. And I mean, there is science out there now. I say science, but there is technology out there now. Whereas, for example, they're producing meat without actually having to kill an animal.
No, SOCO, I mean, like, what else is a 3D printer but like a really rudimentary
Oh, that's
version of
true.
a replicator? Where
That's
like a
that's true. I
person
didn't
can
even think about
go
that.
out and buy a 3D printer, and they can basically like make whatever kind of gun they can find, like the specifics for, or like an arm cast, or all sorts of different things from 3D printers. So like we're early stages already on that train of thought. It's just going to be like, who knows how many years before it's like replicating, yeah, like you said, like replicating food or more complicated things.
Okay. Well, okay, actually I forgot about 3D printers. Well, okay. Maybe the possibility, I don't know. All right. Well, you just put me in my tracks. So, there you go, Matt.
When more interestingly enough, the pseudo sequel to Snow Crash is actually exactly about that. It's
Wait, the
entirely about,
replicators?
yeah, it's entirely about like a later society after the events of Snow Crash has like all these what are called matter compilers, and
Okay.
so it is post scarcity, but is actually still classist and has like all these other like social issues, and that's what the book goes into.
Mm.
I'll leave it at that. But it's just interesting to think. It's interesting to talk about because there are, in some ways, I feel like those two books are like Neil Stephenson's like response to a lot of the ideas in Star Trek, because he might be a little bit more cynical or skeptical about the trajectory of human history versus Gene Roddenberry, who was, I love it, but he's very optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, the future I still think is Alien. So I'm talking Ridley Scott Alien. That's what I'm thinking.
That's a very that's that's
They're
like
not the.
cynical in a way that neither of the last two authors I mentioned could even attempt.
Well, actually,
Rampant capitalism, everybody's having aliens put in their stomachs.
okay, I'm hoping not the xenomorph stuff, but actually, oh man, this actually brings into another discussion I just thought of because I don't think I've shared this with you. You know, there's a big Avatar kind of revival. A little, I say big, but
There are a lot of people who love the Avatar movies. I don't understand.
well, I just actually listened to. Okay, Chapo Trap House did an episode just recently on it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it really kind of second. I actually was a little shocked when I listened to it, and I say shocked, but I was like, oh, this is actually a bit more insightful than I realized. They actually went into into the movie, and in actuality, the way they put it, really, it's actually a much smarter film than I think people, and even at my time, at the time when I watched it, because I remember watching the movie and just being like, oh, it looked really pretty,
Yeah.
but that's what I took away from it,
Are
and
we
I
talking about
always,
the first Alien?
oh, Avatar. I'm sorry, I'm talking
Oh,
about Avatar
Avatar.
right now.
All right, we got
Avatar.
on to Avatar. No, wait,
Yeah.
Avatar.
Yeah. Oh
Well,
yeah. Oh yeah. Didn't. Okay. Yeah. No. I'm talking
no, I
about
know you were
Avatar.
talking about Avatar, but for some reason I thought you were talking about Alien being a
I.
smart movie, because Avatar, I won't allow that. I won't allow it.
No,
No, but go
actually,
on, please, Soko.
well, it was interesting because I have to give it. I mean, I maybe need to watch the movie again because after I listened to that episode, I was like, oh, hey, this is actually. Maybe there was a lot more like because a lot of people wrote off the script as dancing. What's that movie called?
Dances with Wolves in Space. Yeah.
Yes. And no, actually, it was a lot more a way the Chapo guys talked about it. It was a lot more, or
It's
Chapo
more
folks.
like Lawrence of Arabia in space.
Actually, no, I've never watched Lawrence of Arabia. I've only
Very
seen.
similar story. Well, I say that. The movie is a very similar storyline. The book is a bit different.
Well, it's actually interesting just because the Chapo guys talked about, it really goes into, and the Chapo heroes, it was Matt Christman, Will Maneker, and Felix. How do you say his last name? I forget, but they were the ones who talked about it, and they just mentioned like actually it's more of it's the future, but really on the trajectory that we're currently on.
Yeah.
It's taking just the trajectory of our time, or of that time, which was 08, 09, right, when that movie came out, and it really goes more deeper, just talking about. I mean, there are certain things about it where I was like, oh, I was like, oh, this is nothing to think about. Oh, these characters are really cliche, but no, they were like, no, this is actually how these is basically talking about, um, because it goes into like the film itself. It's these folks who went to another planet to get more resources, right?
Right.
Essentially, they point out like they've drained the whole Earth of its resources, and they're continuing that same kind of thinking, essentially now going to another planet to go drain the resources there. Now I'm not so eloquent, as you can tell. I'm not really so eloquent in
I mean,
explaining
I
about
can
what they talk
already
about.
tell you right there, though, that explanation doesn't make sense, because we have the amount of resources in our solar system is mind-boggling. We would have to. There's no way that we can use it up unless we were multiplying, like as a species, we're
Mhm.
multiplying like crazy.
Well,
Like,
I mean,
look at what all we've done with
mhm.
just the little old Earth as is. And like, granted, yes, water is a hard resource to come by. We can go over that, but like, in
Well,
terms of
I wanted to get
raw,
into, well,
no,
I don't want
go
to
ahead.
go into that part. I just want to go into more of the, because what I, not to say that, what you just said, not to dismiss it, but the um I think what the movie goes more really just into more of the uh I mean the script, it really does more of a critique of really just the thinking that's been being pushed and what it could lead to. Not necessarily so much, it doesn't talk about like
When you say the thinking, how do you mean? Go
kind of
for
more of in this way a more criticism of capitalism.
okay,
Um there's more criticism of that.
all right,
There's more criticism of the characters or the people in power, essentially too, who they are and how they think.
sure.
And it talks. I mean, I was a
I
little
mean, I don't feel.
surprised.
I guess my response to
Hmm.
this right now is I don't feel like James Cameron did a better job in that movie than he did in either Alien or not. He didn't do Alien. In
He did
Aliens,
Aliens, yeah.
I don't
He
think
did
he
it.
did a better job of that critique than he does in Aliens. I don't think he does a better critique of that than he did in The Abyss. Like,
I
it
actually have never
kind of
seen The Abyss, so go ahead.
I kind of felt like Avatar is the exact same movie as those other movies. It's just they changed a lot of the color palettes. So
Hey,
I guess that's my response to it. I'd be curious, I guess, to look
listen
into
to
it
them.
more. Yeah,
Listen to theirs and then watch some, because I'm not doing, you can tell I'm not really doing a good job explaining it. I really recommend just go ahead and listen to that episode, because I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that, just certain other things too, and I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. um so point getting all to it though, that the future aspect, like when I was talking about the alien stuff too, it's just more like how it's not so shiny, right?
sure,
It's a really, it's a really a really kind of dark future. That's definitely not Star Trek.
right.
Uh, and I mean, I don't know if, and I do get annoyed by Gene Roddenberry a lot because of just some of his ideas and how the future. There's a lot of arrogance behind Gene Roddenberry.
I my other response to that
Yeah.
though, to what you're saying is like, I feel like as a society we're a little addicted to like
Mhm.
having these shitty looking futures. Like, dystopias have become a little too popular to the point where it's like anytime anybody has anything that sounds kind of nice,
Yeah.
people snub their nose at it. In the sense, even so far as like all the new Star Treks are just like, oh yeah, the future Federation's horrible and racist and blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, I guess
Oh, I haven't watched the new Star Treks at all,
they
so
suck. They're terrible. I would never. I just do not recommend them. But uh,
okay.
they exist as these means to talk about like modern day problems, and
Yeah.
that was never like Star Trek's bread and butter. You know what I mean? Like, that was never. Well, I say that. Okay, original Star Trek
Original Star Trek was
definitely
more.
had a lot of episodes where it was like, well, we're going to talk about racism today, or we're going to talk
Yeah.
about ignorance or whatever. And that's fine. That's within, it's not like it's not within the parameters of Star Trek. It's just that
Mhm.
when the entire show becomes that, it really loses a lot of its intrigue, because the intrigue is learning about a future that doesn't exist. We
Yeah.
live in this reality. We know what it's like. I'd like to see something that's a little bit different, a little bit, unique or whatever, instead of just like another, dystopian future where everybody's robots or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, everything's. I mean, like, you can watch any episode of Black Mirror and feel miserable about tomorrow.
I've
But
never
it's.
watched an episode of Nuclear yet, but go
I
ahead.
mean, there are some pretty good episodes, but I'm at this point where I'm weary of dystopias because
Mhm.
I myself, just on my own time, I've thought of all the miserable, terrible shit that can happen in the world just on, just on the trajectory of how things are going. It's not that hard of a thing to do at a certain point. So like, why do we need to like fill our days with it all the time as entertainment? Might be nice to kind of think about. I would like to think there's somebody out there who's like, well, I can imagine a future even better than Star Trek. Make Gene Roddenberry weep because he was so unimaginative.
Well, I guess actually, it's funny to think like because we had that. I mean, we always have to keep these like mediums I just talked the popular mediums. Like,
Yeah,
keep in mind, I don't know, so you might know more than I do, Matt, when it comes to, I would say more underground or more other stories that were really popular.
yeah,
Um, like for me, I know about Star Trek and and then you have the Alien, right? Alien
right.
series. Um, and you know, from my understanding with Star Trek, 1960s comes out, we have this big idea of what the future could be like, and it's really optimistic,
Yeah.
right? And no, nothing to worry about with scarcity. And I'm pretty sure there were other mediums at that time that were talked about a more dystopian kind of society, where the future isn't. Maybe
Oh
we
yeah, I
do
mean
explore space.
there were plenty of dystopias before all that because you had I mean one of the most well a couple of the most infamous dystopian novels. You have Brave New World and you have what the hell 1984,
Yeah,
right? Oh, and then Clockwork Orange. That's another one.
but I'm talking about in the matters of space, right?
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
yeah.
What about? Oh, I mean, I don't know. It's
So,
that yeah. Unfortunately, I couldn't say. I mean, there's tons of space novels written before then, but I haven't read any of them. I mean, maybe
uh,
Starship Troopers, but that's all I can think of.
I mean, with Star Trek, and of course, it actually got canceled, but then it still was there. But people for, I guess, popular film media, right, or film,
Yeah.
Star Trek was the imagined future, and then suddenly you get like movies like Alien coming out later in a time, kind of giving not really such a great future,
Right.
such an optimistic future, and rather it goes into even more because actually in the movie itself, now that I'm thinking about it, they're just a bunch of miners
Right.
who get this, who well, who essentially, I mean, they're getting resources from another planet and they're going back to Earth with these resources, right?
Right.
So it still follows that kind of trend that we're not in a post scarcity society. We're still in a society whereas scarcity is an issue, right?
Right.
So it's not so optimistic, and it gets pretty dark, especially with the xenomorph and it now being wanted to be used as a weapon or something of that nature too. So um, that then starts to, I mean, and maybe what am I getting with all this? That the the optimistic future, I guess, started kind of, I don't know. Actually, I don't know where I'm getting with this, Matt. I'm just talking.
I I'm trying to figure it out too. I wasn't responding because I was like, where is SoCo going? Fascinating. I mean, my feelings about this
Yeah.
whole topic is like, do both. Do really
Mhm,
utopic futures, do really dystopic futures, and do also something in the middle. That's why I'm bringing up Neil Stevenson books
mhm.
because I'm interested in them and I like them because they're in the middle. They kind of observe what the future could be like from a place of like, well, it's neither amazing or terrible. Like there are some amazing things happening and there are some terrible things happening. And that's a more earnest way of talking about the future. Whereas, like Gene Roddenberry is so optimistic to the point that you actually kind of resent the future painting that he's making. And then something like Blade Runner or,
Yeah, I forgot about Blade
name
Runner.
any number of dystopias are so bleak that you're just like all you can do is wash yourself in it and be miserable. Like I loved Blade Runner 2049, but at the end of
Oh.
that movie I was just like everything's miserable. Okay, fuck it. Like what am What am I supposed to do with that? You know what I mean?
Well, okay, I guess this is my point, that those mediums, it was popularized. Star Trek was a popularized future, and maybe it just wasn't on, I don't know, most people's minds. I mean, that was the future most people were thinking about, and then you
Yeah.
get now dystopian, and now people are thinking about that, right? Because before it really wasn't thought about. Does that
Yeah,
make any
well,
sense?
I guess what I'm trying to say is people have been thinking about that for a while now. It's not like
But on a more, on a greater scale, like I'm talking about a lot of people. It's just the it's part of the mainstream. That's what I'm talking about. Does
yeah,
that make sense?
it's been part of the mainstream for at least a good 6 years. Like it hasn't. It's not like it's a new thing. It's been around for a while, and so that's why I'm saying what I'm saying, which is like I would. It's interesting going back to Avatar.
Hmm.
Here's my thing about Avatar is I don't feel like it's very much a critique of anything. It's just kind of an observation because yes, there are like minute critiques of all the power structures and whatever,
Hmm.
but like you're never at the end of the day like going like, oh yeah, that world they're living in is so terrible. It's more like, oh, I'd like to have my brain in a brain transplanter. It's what I mean? Like I never. Whereas, like something like Blade Runner, you don't feel good. You don't feel comfortable about any of the technology on display. You don't feel comfortable about that future. Avatar feels comfortable, and that's always been my kind of thing that I felt weird about it. Is like I don't feel comfortable about this future you painted, where people can
Hmm.
go to distant planets and shoot up people and whatever, and like great, that's the whole point of the movie and whatever, right?
Hmm.
Like don't be mean to people. Great, thanks James Cameron. I've really never thought about that one. I'm so enlightened now. But anyway, there
Well,
is
I did.
actually no,
No,
go on so
well, it was actually, it was just mostly because I listened to the Chapo
yeah,
episode,
yeah,
and they talked about, and I was like, oh, I guess because they put into like, there's some nuances that, because even, and I want to say, and I mean, I don't want to talk too much, but like Felix, actually, I think is the one in the episode who actually uh, says that people should really give this movie more of a chance, essentially. And it just listen to the episode. Maybe we can talk about it another time, because
all right,
it gives me, when I listened to it, I was like, oh, I didn't even think about any of that.
sure.
Um, and so I was like, maybe I should go back and watch Avatar again. Um, but anyway, going on. We talked so much about this. With the
This is the
hopes
big
for
topic. This is
no, this was an important topic.
There is, well, in response also to
Yeah.
resource scarcity in the world and whatnot in this age of COVID. Uh, you should probably cover this, SOCO, but I'll introduce it, which is the whole thing. Okay, I did not realize this. I found this out earlier today. This aspect of it, which is that there's a bipartisan bill pushing for an additional 1,200 for families. Am I to understand this correctly?
Yeah, bipartisan. Well, two people, Sanders and Josh Hawley from
Right.
Missouri, senator from Missouri. Go on.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no. So, from what I understand, it's bipartisan because Holly is a Republican, right?
That's right. That's right.
So, I'm
Uh,
kind of surprised to hear that because, I mean, I guess I say it's not like okay. Was the last stimulus thing a bipartisan thing or not?
God.
Who
y-
knows?
yeah, I mean, it got passed, so yes.
It may have been
But it was.
bipartisan in the sense that nobody wanted, none of the Congress wanted to pass. It was like, well, let's just let them all starve and die. Come on.
Well, actually, it's funny because I was gonna say, before we went into this, I was actually gonna say that um, Star Trek Future is not going to happen because of all this kind of
That's
stuff.
right. That's what this was all about. Was Soko's big downer to end the episode with.
And this is it. This is it, actually, because we're not. The stimulus stuff is basically in limbo. I mean,
Right.
Star Trek talks about, like, with the past tense episodes, like that episode I told you with Deep Space Nine, they address these issues that they were having, these greater issues that lead into a better future, right?
Right.
As far as we know, a better future as far as we know. But with all this kind of garbage happening right now with the stimulus, and now Sanders and Hawley. Now Hawley, you talked about he's a Republican, and he's interesting. He is one of the fellows who actually, I mean, after seeing this, I have a feeling this is going. I mean, he's actually, I think, the youngest senator right now,
Okay.
40 in the Senate.
Certainly, on
And
average, it's pretty young.
yes, and I don't know. My feeling is, I wonder what the future holds for him, for just based off of this and some other things I've seen with him, because he's been questioning a lot with like the tech industry as well. He's
Hmm.
actually wants to I think push for more regulations, which is very different compared to a lot of other Republicans. And actually, he was also I I have to look more into this because I think this is very similar to also another. Is his name Matt Gates? I want to say. Do you know what I'm talking about when I mention that name?
I
I think
don't.
he's in
Yeah,
the.
I don't know who Matt Gates is.
And this is the thing. It's a weird time because there's a new type of, like we have for in Sanders. Like we have the progressives moving right there. We have more progressives coming out of the Democratic Party now, or it's getting bigger.
Right.
But then you have people like Holly, and I want to say there's others out there too, who are pushing for policies that aren't necessarily with the corporate agenda of the GOP. So,
Yeah. I mean, I would call that rebranding. I mean, it sounds to me from a strategic standpoint, they want to distance themselves from the 2016 conception of the GOP, which was, at least in popular American opinion, some kind of fascist, coup or whatever. So now they're trying. Now you're seeing sort of Holly certainly I would say represents a moderate stance from the looks of it. Would that be a fair assessment, Soko?
ah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Um, I really don't know. I don't have. I mean, there's actually with him and some others that are just popping into my head right now.
yeah,
Um, I don't have the words to express this exactly. What's exactly happening? Um, but it is certainly in relation to what's been happening for the last 4 years. What policies are being pushed now, which is calling for greater assistance to people.
hmm,
Okay, whether it be on the Democrat side, Medicare for all. I say Democrats, progressives, um, and which is a much better to kind of address these issues of health, to address the issues of even like housing too, address the issues. Well, we talked about this with UBI, I think, in the last
yeah,
episode, right? There is a certainly a push coming out to where people are wanting uh, uh, greater assistance in the
yeah,
kind of what's happening, and for a lot of people, it's hard to
right,
get by. Um, and I don't know, with this new push now from both Sanders and Hawley, and who knows what's going to happen? Because this basically right now, I mean, they're going to be talking more this Friday about what exactly is going to happen with the stimulus checks. They were pushing for 1,200 because the original thing was, I think, was going to be $600 per family. Yeah,
yeah.
they were going to push for. Originally, that was going to be passed, but Sanders and Hawley kind of pushed back on this, if I'm
Mhm.
understanding correctly. And for Sanders, actually, originally Sanders back with the months ago was for $2,000 for every family.
Right, I
Um,
remember hearing about that.
and I think this might have maybe 2,000 just wasn't, because I mean with Hawley pushing with them on it too. I guess that's why he might have gone to 1,200 instead of 2,000. I don't know, because he thought that might be able to. Maybe Holly was willing to more agree to that to help push for the bill. But I don't know, this new one coming up. They're gonna essentially, um, well, talk about it or debate it or vote on it this Friday.
Okay.
And what's at stake is a lot of stuff. $1,200 is at stake, but the alternative plan was
My
good.
$1,200 is at stake.
Sorry, you're sorry.
My money, our money is at stake.
That's right. The 1,200 for every American family out there, and uh, other thing at stake is also because they were saying, well, the alternative was $600 and not because they wanted to push for not only $1,200 but also unemployment benefits too.
Yeah.
Which would have been in this case $300, 300 additional dollars for the unemployment benefits you're getting right now from the federal government.
The current unemployment health are not. The current unemployment benefits are from the last stimulus bill were pretty big, from what I recall.
Yes.
I mean, it was
Go ahead.
like I don't remember, but I mean, it was something like an additional 500 a week or something like that.
$600. It was $600.
Okay.
So you were, and that was, I mean, keep in mind, I mean, if you're earning, what was it? If you were earning $300 per week on your unemployment, you were also earning an additional 600 on top of that, so 900 a week. Then, I mean, that's a huge amount of money. But now they're going to, I mean, the plan is, with Sanders and Hawley, they wanted to push for 1,200 a month and 300, but the Steve Mnuchin, treasurer, had an alternative plan to do, I think, what was it, $600, but to exclude the unemployment benefits, so there wouldn't be any unemployment aid, as I understand.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like this, it just makes me really, really sad, and just because of I mean, this is a big issue with with money and
Well, and furthermore, the other question is, will it pass? And if it doesn't pass, that's it until the next Congress.
yeah,
Like until Biden is in office and everybody, like everything, all the shakeout has happened from this election. So I mean, if that doesn't go through, it's like, okay, well, check you later. Like, I mean, that's kind of, I don't know. I'm trying not to be too skeptical, or not skeptical, but I'm trying not to be too cynical about it. But I can't help but think like, well, it's not looking great right now.
no, it's not. We're I mean, it could happen. I don't know what exactly, but I mean, Sanders kind of backed down a little bit about this because actually, might actually end up happening is the 600 for every family,
Okay.
or just because I think like they talk this Friday, right? And they vote,
Yeah.
and if Sanders were to push back, or Hawley or whatever, there's a threat of government shutdown. So, and if that
Oh,
happens,
that's T Dog's last Christmas present before he leaves, Before he walks out of the White House, both middle fingers in the air, walking down the road.
but that would, and I don't think Sanders would, and I want to say, and like he doesn't want to hurt federal employees, because
Yeah,
under a shutdown they can't
right,
get checks.
right.
So or they don't get the paycheck. So I have a feeling there's going to be okay. Well, actually, maybe then the shutdown may not happen. Essentially, I think it's gonna just end up, they're gonna pass something that's not gonna really be that great. But then again, our when it comes to our unemployment numbers, they're not as bad as they were in March, because
They've improved,
they
and fortunately, like COVID. I mean, the vaccine's coming through. in terms of overall deaths,
Yeah.
COVID is turning out to be far less deadlier than we were worried. Cases have gone up. I don't know what the hospitalization issue is right now. I don't have enough information regarding that. But, everybody had all hands on deck for a really bad situation. We half-assed our way into some kind of a solution, and it's bad, but it's not as bad as it could have been, is sort of where we are right now. I mean,
Oh.
it's kind of amazing. It could have been really bad. And it's been like, oh, well, this sucks. Like,
It's
no,
still really bad. It's
yeah.
still really bad. If you're saying it, well, it probably wouldn't have been as bad as as we thought it was going to be. But no, it's still really, really bad, I think.
It's bad, but the worst case scenario everybody was preparing for was going to be apocalyptic, Like,
Are you sure
this
about
is like,
what? No,
yeah, we're talking,
I don't.
2 million people were going to be dead. Like, it was
I
looking bad, and like we're gonna have some kind of economic recession as a fallout up from this, but I don't think we're gonna have the same sort of like I don't think we're gonna have a Great Depression style situation. It's not gonna be great. Don't get me wrong.
I
It's
wouldn't.
not gonna be great.
Matt, I wouldn't say that people were thinking that we're going to go apocalyptic. Some people were, but the people who we needed to think that way were not thinking that way. And I'm
Well,
talking.
that's true. That's very true.
Because if they were thinking that way, then they would have addressed this issue really strongly, right? Right?
Yeah, I mean it was addressed in a very half-assed way, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in right now.
Yeah.
And once again, I mean, I would say Congress is addressing the situation in a very half-assed way as well.
Yes. Okay.
Because when you look at the situation as is, it's just. But anyway, we
Yeah.
can save that
For another time.
time.
Because I think
And
we are going a bit over time, right?
yeah, we're over time, so we should do what we do every episode. The most important thing
What?
is
Wait,
covering the
before we
price of Dogecoin.
before we do that, I do have to talk of just 2 minutes. Can we give 2 minutes to this? 2 minutes.
Okay,
The
I'll allow it.
KFC.
What about KFC?
There's they made some
Their
sort
chicken sucks. That's what's about KFC.
well, to everyone out there, they have there's a movie coming out with Mario Lopez in it.
Okay, I'm listening.
KFC, it's called A Recipe for Seduction. It's about Colonel Sanders, who is Mario Lopez, who stars as Colonel Sanders in this
Okay.
movie about it's a mini movie. It's essentially just a commercial for chicken, but
Is it an erotic movie?
I believe so, because Mario Lopez is a chef for this, I don't know, this $1 million millionaire or something, and he has a secret recipe for chicken, and it helps seduce the housewife of the movie.
This is the kind of thing from a capitalist nightmare I want. This is the kind of thing that justifies and redeems capitalism.
This is what we're getting out of this whole of our society right now. Corporations putting money into and they're being really, basically it's 15-minute long. It's being released tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, on Lifetime.
Where is it being released?
On Lifetime.
Oh,
Lifetime. It's called A Recipe for Seduction. Okay.
Holy shit.
Well, I wanted to talk about that, mention it. I mean, this is our future, Matt.
I'm excited. That is exactly what is missing in media is fast food erotica. I cannot wait.
Okay, well, anyway, we better go on. Go ahead, Matt.
Hopefully one day we'll also have a Dogecoin erotic channel. Anyway, so the price of Dogecoin today at 8:37 p.m. December 12th, 2020 is currently 0.003168. Oh, now it's 3167. It's vibrating between 68 and 67 here. and it's just been holding the same price as pretty much last week, which not the most exciting news, but I would say is exciting in the sense that it has not held this level for a long time. So
Okay.
that bodes well.
That's
If you're a
interesting.
Dogecoin aficionado like myself, that bodes well.
Where does currency, Matt? Where does currency? Just stay stable. I don't know why.
One day we're going to get to the big $1. I'm here for the ride.
Anyway, we've gone over quite a bit of time, and I think it's time to end our episode for today. So until next time, Matt.
Until next time.
Okay.
This is Matt.
This is SOCO. As Matt said last time, stay sexy, right? Is that going to be our going away?
Stay fried.
Stay
sexy.
Stay fried. Stay sexy. All right. Talk to you later.
All right, later.